because of Bill Belichick. Atlanta, Dallas with Galloway, and Miami. So those 7 teams have no first-round picks. Unlike the last couple of years, where last year quarterback was 1, 2, 3, and 5 in the top half of the draft, and the year before with Manning and Lee, quarterback was 1, 2. This is more a nuts and bolts at the very top of the draft. Defense hasn't been first since 1994, since Cincinnati took Big Daddy Wilkinson. So we've been 5 years where an offensive player has gone at the top of the draft. This is kind of going back to the roots a little bit. And then you're probably going to have tackle and linebacker next before your first skill player. However, look for a half dozen receivers to go, started by Peter Warrick. Look for 4 running backs to go, probably in the top 21, if not higher than that, although you never know. So there will be some skill players, you know, from college, but probably only one quarterback, Chad Pennington. So a little different flavor than the last couple of years if you've watched the draft. Wanted to give you the big picture before we get into the microbreweries, which we begin with Cleveland's pick officially to the podium and the commissioner. And the fan poll, almost 50% say what? That they should pick Courtney Brown, and guess what? The other 50%, you're out of luck. There he is. There he is, and to Cleveland he shall be.
First choice in the NFL Draft 2000, the Cleveland Browns select Courtney Brown, defensive end, Penn State.
.6'4", 269 from South Carolina. And a lot of his family's up. I met a couple of his young nephew. They're all so polite. They're all so excited. And then they should be. What a great day this is. You've worked hard. Talk about it. Here he is.
Chris, I think you bring up a great point. Here's a young man that's really earned this opportunity. He has worked hard. He did outstanding things at Penn State. He showed an awful lot of quickness, an awful lot of speed. He's not the biggest guy, which really impresses me. I think his frame can get bigger. I think it's fair, as Tommy mentioned, to say this could be the next Bruce Smith that we're talking about. Maybe doesn't have the length of the arms. Maybe doesn't have the size up front. I think the big thing for him, he's going to have to learn to take on double teams. The big thing that young defensive ends have to learn is they've got to find complementary moves. He can't just be an outside rusher. He's going to have to rely on power and strength, and he'll have to wind up with some type of a move that takes him inside to be a complete defensive end. Right now, he certainly has the speed and the intensity. I think the other things he'll be able to work with in the Brown organization.
He joins Bruce Smith, #1 overall pick in the draft in 1985. And Leroy Selman, defensive end in 1976, #1 overall pick in the draft. Bruce Smith will be a Hall of Famer. Leroy Selman is a Hall of Famer. Too Tall Jones was also a #1 overall pick. So at defensive ends, there's some pretty good pedigree. You pick one at defensive end, you turn out pretty darn good for a decade.
Really do, Chris. I think with Courtney Brown, you look at all that ability, and such a nice kid, and such a humble young man. The intensity, I think that's something he needs to pick up. Talk about Bruce Smith, the fire, the determination. Once you get into the NFL and you're going up against those bookend tackles with a great technique, that's what's going to be interesting to see if he can pick it up. Arrington already has it. Brown needs to develop it in the National Football League.
That's Tim Couch, who you saw up there, who last year was in Courtney's spot. It's a nice touch by Brown.
Well, it really is, Chris. But in regards to what Mel said, you know, I've been around some guys that really could knock you down, and they were nice. But when they put that uniform on, they all of a sudden found a nasty streak that you wouldn't see generally. I think Courtney Brown, when he puts a uniform on, becomes the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde of football. He plays with such great intensity.
Well, I tell you what, when you have about a half but 6 months to kind of make your decision, it's not that surprising that the coach who made this choice is readily available to ESPN. And then, of course, is Chris Palmer, the coach of the Cleveland Browns. He's with our Susie Colbert. And Suze, they got their man.
Chris, they certainly did. And Chris, we know how difficult this decision was. LeVar Arrington actually rated higher on the draft board. So why Courtney Brown?
Well, we had a long, healthy discussion about both players, and they're both outstanding football players. They come from an outstanding football program at Penn State. And basically what it came down to was that the defensive end is a factor in rushing the quarterback, and that's what we decided on. But both players are outstanding football players, and we couldn't go wrong with either guy, but we decided on Courtney Brown, and we're very, very happy.
There were some questions whether or not, because he's so polite and quiet, is he nasty enough for the NFL?
Well, I think if you go back and look at some of the Big Ten quarterbacks, when they threw an interception, he had a knack of turning around and hunting him up and knocking him to the ground. So I don't think the quarterbacks in the Big Ten think he's really a mild-mannered guy on the field. He's a guy that plays within himself. He's an outstanding football player. And when you see a guy that is a good student, is a good person, and is an outstanding football player, you like to see those guys finish first.
The Browns signed defensive end Keith McKenzie in the offseason, but we can assume that Courtney Brown will be starting at right defensive end. What adjustments will he have to make from the college level to the pro level?
Well, I told Keith McKenzie he would be the starting defensive end going into camp, and we'll have competition at every position. And, Courtney will have to try to get the number one spot, and Keith's got to hold the number one spot. So it'll be an interesting training camp for those defensive ends.
Of course, Joe Paterno, as coach at Penn State, called Courtney Brown the best defensive end in Penn State history. Now we'll see if he can be the best defensive end in Cleveland Browns history. Let's go to Mike Tirico, who is with Courtney Brown.
Susie, thank you. Courtney, congratulations. Turn around a second. You have Bruce Smith's picture back here, Too Tall Jones, over there, Plunkett, Elway, all the number one picks of all time, and now you're one of them. How does it feel?
Feels great. I consider it a blessing and an honor to be the first player picked in the 2000 draft, and I just want to give thanks to the Lord for his many blessings, and give thanks to my family, my mom and dad who made it out here, and just give thanks to my coaches back at school, everybody who played a part in this, all my family back at home, and Alvin, family and friends, everyone who's supporting this thing, and I just want to say thanks.
You mentioned Alvin, South Carolina, town of 800. They're at the Kinlaw's barbershop all watching and cheering, I'm sure, right now. Tell me what it's like for a small-town guy to be the number one pick in the draft here in the big city and really live a dream.
It's exciting, man. It's really exciting. It's hard to put into words, but I feel real good, and I'm thankful, and I just want to say hey to everyone back in Alvin.
Congratulations, Courtney. Courtney Brown, number one pick. Tim Couch handed the jersey, somewhat symbolic. We'll see what happens down the road. The Washington Redskins are the team on the clock next. And remember, at NFL.com and ESPN.com, Draft Central has you completely updated. You can join in and get in on the fan poll. Who will the Washington Redskins pick? They have the number 2 overall pick in the draft and number 3. They're on the clock. You look at their war room as we come back from New York and around the NFL.
So Courtney Brown, defensive end, Penn State, the first pick. It looks like his college teammate will be the second pick, LeVar Arrington. But we should explain that when you are back-to-back on the clock, as Washington is now, as the Jets will be later, you get 30 minutes. So in a rare invoking of the rules here at the draft, you get the full 30 minutes. And even if you make that set, your first of the 2 picks immediately, you get the complete 30 minutes. So it's Washington's half hour. 15 minutes of fame. In Washington, it's 30 minutes of fame. Our polls, 61%, I'm informed, say they should pick LeVar Arrington. And the Skins, Joe, as you know, always try to please the Redskins faithful.
With the second choice in the NFL Draft 2000, the Washington Redskins select LeVar Arrington, linebacker, Penn State.
Double teammates.
Chris, I think when you look at LeVar Arrington, you're talking about a situation with the Washington Redskins where you need desperately help at the outside linebacker position. You need an attitude in the front seven that he will provide. I credit Vinny Serrato, Daniel Snyder for not playing games here and making Arrington the third pick, not creating a disharmony with negotiations early. Make LeVar Arrington the second pick overall. He deserves to be the second pick. He wanted to be a Washington Redskin all along. And I'll tell you what, when we look down the road 3 years from now, back when this draft, and you see a Lawrence Taylor Jr. say how type LeVar Arrington playing for the Washington Redskins, maybe developing and being the factor behind the Redskins, maybe representing the NFC in the Super Bowl this year. What a pick this could be.
We talked about the nastiness of an attitude. You said Courtney Brown may have to develop it. And when you have a young man like Arrington, he's a guy who's just really excited to be a Washington Redskin. He's coming to an organization that is bound and determined to build themselves a championship right now. And with the signings they've had, to be around a Bruce Smith, you almost have a situation where you get like Leonard Marshall and Lawrence Taylor were when you have an Arrington and a Bruce Smith playing next to one another. The thing that he's going to have to do is he's going to have to learn to play a bit more disciplined in this defense. He does have the opportunity to have someone like a Mark Carey behind him and a Sam Shade, veterans as safeties, so he will be able to be cut loose and go after the quarterback. The Redskins wanted a playmaker on defense. They got one.
Joe, you were right. They did get a great linebacker, and I'll tell you what, you see LeVar Arrington bouncing around, the attitude, the emotion. I tell you, he gets you fired up. There's no question about that. Look at the size, 6'3", 250, chiseled frame, tremendous speed and athleticism. You see all the production, the block kicks, the LeVar leap. Remember, this is a guy who was a great running back in high school, scored 72 touchdowns at the prep level, was recruited in terms of basketball by the likes of Georgetown, UMass, and North Carolina. So the athleticism that he had at the high school level translated into all those sacks with the Nittany Lions of Penn State. You see him here. Watch this play. The LeVar leap into the backfield and nailed the running back for a tackle for a loss. An incredible play here against Purdue. He got after Drew Brees, as Courtney Brown did that afternoon. Here against Pittsburgh, this is late in the LeVar leap again, blocking the field goal. And you see intimidation in his game, not just on a game basis in the big game, every week and every time he puts on those pads, he goes about his business in a very workmanlike, very serious manner. Here he drew a penalty flag, took a seat on the sidelines for a while, but when you look at LeVar Arrington, that's what he brings you, that attitude and the emotion and a passion for the game that really, I think in this draft, guys, is second to none. I think you see here the causing the interception. This is the A&M game where Jerry Sandusky, defensive coordinator, his last game, LeVar Arrington, Courtney Brown set out the win one for Jerry Sandusky. They shut out the Aggies of Texas A&M. Arrington was the key guy there, and for me, I tell you, it wasn't hard to say, okay, who's the best player in this draft? In my opinion, there's no doubt LeVar Arrington is that player.
So what a proud moment, of course, for Penn State. Now, a few years ago, we had 1-3 go at the draft at the top of the at the 97 draft when Orlando Pace and Sean Springs went 1-3 from Ohio State. But as far as 1-2, that's a different story. It's only happened twice. In 1984, Irving Fryer was selected by the Patriots, Dean Steinkuhler on the offensive line by the then Houston Oilers. 1967, Bubba Smith. So Clint Jones from Michigan State selected too by the Minnesota Vikings. Since the common draft, this now is only the third time that college teammates have gone 1-2. It's not often that the Washington Redskins or any team that has serious Super Bowl aspirations get to pick not only once, but twice this high in any draft. So 2-3 puts them in a position where, while their young owner Daniel Snyder feels they have a distinct Super Bowl possibility. Ed Werder is in Washington, and it's got to be excitement.
Yeah, in fact, it was interesting. All along they've maintained that Courtney Brown and LeVar Arrington didn't make any difference to them which one was left. But when the Browns chose Brown and left Arrington for the Redskins, it was not raucous celebration in the Redskins war room, but there was certainly a definite reaction. They were very happy that LeVar Arrington was left for them. There was no real drama in who they wanted. They wanted Arrington all along, and then the only difference was whether he'd be the second pick or the third. I think they were pretty enlightened about the fact that they didn't want to start what they view as a long partnership with a potentially great player off on an acrimonious note by putting him for negotiating purposes behind an offensive lineman like Chris Samuels and in front of a Bengals pick for negotiating tactic purposes. I think they got some assurances that this will not be an acrimonious contract negotiation, that there will be an understanding he'll be in camp on time, Mike, and then also that he will accept deferred money as part of his signing bonus.
Ed, that is all important down the line to LeVar Arrington, but right now the important thing is being selected and being with family.